Hello everyone and Happy New Year! I hope you're all doing well and you're looking forward to 2025. Woo! And to start off this year strong, I want to talk about everybody's favorite billionaire with daddy issues. Not this guy. Obviously not this guy. Because for the past 20 years, holy shit, that's how old Batman Begins is? Oh my god. Jesus Christ. Batman fans have been eating pretty good when it comes to movies and TV if you ignore this guy. But lately his future has been a little uncertain with not one but two Batman films getting delayed. First we have The Batman Part 2, which is the sequel to Matt Reeves' The Batman, which is a more grounded and realistic take on the character. And then we have Batman the Brave and the Bold, which is going to be a more fantastical take on the character that is going to slot right into James Gunn's DCU. With this one specifically seeming like there's maybe more going on behind the scenes than we're led to believe. James Gunn has talked about how the script isn't ready yet and they're just pushing it back. And it seems like this one might just be a tougher egg to crack. And as of right now, the film doesn't really have a definitive release date, which has led to everyone to at least think the question, why don't we just take this guy and put him in this thing? And today I kind of just want to talk about that and explore that idea. And yeah, I get it. Some white guy in his mid-20s talking about what he thinks a major studio should do with the superhero he likes. You're right. But also, I feel like everyone that I've seen talk about this has either come at this from the perspective of a comic book fan or a movie fan. And I think that it's important to tackle this from both angles. And also, let's be honest, from a financial standpoint, from Warner Brothers' perspective. Because if these movies don't do well, we're not going to get more of them, no matter how good they are. And I know what some of you are thinking right now, which is, well, we just saw the silhouette of Batman and Creature Commandos and he looks nothing like Robert Pattinson. Listen, if this guy in real life can look like this guy in animation, I really don't see why this is too far off from this, okay? And also, let's not determine the fate of an entire cinematic universe off of 2 seconds of a silhouette in a cartoon. But I want to talk about, can we have our cake and eat it too? Would it be possible to put Robert Pattinson's Batman into the DCU while still maintaining Matt Reeves' artistic vision? Is that something we would even want in the first place? Honestly, let's find out. And this isn't even really me clickbaiting the video because as I'm writing this, I actually don't know which side I'm going to fall on by the end of this video. So you're along for the journey as well as I am. So before we get into this, I do want to address the opinions of the people who actually matter here, which are James Gunn, Robert Pattinson, and Matt Reeves. Now, I've heard rumors that James and Robert are both open to the idea of that version of Batman joining the DCU, but Matt Reeves is a bit more hesitant. We're going to run with this, even if it's completely false. Just because I think that this is the most fun scenario. Because if the guy who greenlights the movies or Batman himself isn't interested, then this conversation is null and void. So let's start by talking about what this change could mean for Reeves' Batman movies. Hello, Matthew. I know you're watching this. You're so conflicted about this whole situation. You have no idea what you want to do and you're just sitting here waiting for my sage wisdom. Well, let me give it to you. So first, let's start off with my opinion. I think The Batman is the best Batman movie we have ever gotten. Like, don't get me wrong. The Dark Knight is great and is probably a slightly better film overall. But in terms of adapting the character of Batman, I think The Batman clears. It's very clear that Matt Reeves, that's you, has a very specific vision for this character and the universe that he inhabits. And I think we can all agree that we don't want to see that ruined just to be able to slot it in with a bunch of other movies that are made by other people. So, the question is, can we have our cake and eat it too? Could Matt Reeves' Batman join the DCU but still maintain his artistic vision? And my gut says yes. To an extent. Because my brain is saying just let Matt Reeves finish his 3 movies and then we can have Robert Pattinson meet up with the greater universe after that. But it's not that simple now, is it, Matthew? Because you're not the speediest writer in the world now, are you? And I know that people are upset that The Batman Part 2 is being delayed. And while I am disappointed, ultimately I am willing to wait if it means that the end product will be good. But as of right now, this movie is scheduled for 2027. At this rate, if you want to make a trilogy, it's not going to end until 2032. Do we really think that James Gunn and the general public are going to be willing to wait that long to see Batman interact with anyone else in the DC universe? So then if this is how long you're going to take on these movies, then Bruce is going to need to start popping up in these things in between installments. And that may ruin your vision. It's hard to make your story about Batman feel grounded when your boy has been to space. And that brings me to my next point, which is Matt Reeves' vision itself. If it's in its own universe, then honestly, Matt, go buck wild. Do whatever you want to do. But if it gets looped into the DCU, there's going to be certain expectations here. Like, what's up with Robin, Matt? Is he going to show up at some point? Because I would like him to regardless, but if this becomes part of the DCU, then it's basically a requirement. Because if you're going to do your own thing, I guess I can understand not including him, but if Batman joins the DCU, he's going to have to show up at some point. And if he's not going to show up in your movies, are we going to have to wait until they're done to finally get Robin in the DCU? Because here's the thing that I feel really conflicted about. Listening to Reeves talk about Batman really makes me think he understands this character. But also, for reasons that are beyond my understanding, he is so set on making this character grounded and realistic, which is all we have been getting for 2 decades. It seems like he's just completely against the idea of adding anyone to his universe with superpowers or even, dare I say, a little bit of whimsy. But we've already seen plenty of this just from Creature Commandos alone and obviously the trailer for Superman. So that's where that conflict of wanting to support the individual filmmaker but also being a fan of this character comes in. Because on one hand, I want to support Reeves' vision and let him do whatever he wants. But on the other hand, if this were to become the de facto Batman, he would need to change his vision a bit. So we just talked about how putting the Batman into the DCU would affect the Batman, but let's talk about how it would affect the DCU. So, as of the time of recording this video, the only things that we have seen that have been made specifically for the DCU have been Creature Commando Season 1, Superman, which we've only seen the trailer for, and Supergirl, which is about to go into production later this month. Then we have Blue Beetle, The Suicide Squad, and Peacemaker, which are being folded over from the DCEU into this, but are at least mostly canon. And while the MCU took a while to embrace some of the more wild and wacky aspects of the comics, the DCU is going all in from the very start. I mean, the first official thing that we have gotten from the DCU has shit like this in it. The ship is out of the bottle. No matter what Reeves does with his movies, the second there is a Discussing Films post saying that Robert Pattinson has officially joined the DCU, Pattinson is now sharing the same universe as Frankenstein, Clayface, a radioactive skeleton man, and Nathan Fillion with a bowl cut. And the Batman that will be in the Brave and the Bold movie is being crafted to fit into that universe from the start. This guy presumably has experience fighting a lot of these villains already, and if Pattinson joined, either he would have to fight them all for the first time, or we would just have to believe that all of this happened off screen, like between Batman movies. Yeah, Pattinson fought the radioactive skeleton man in between movies where he fought a guy with a gimp mask who tells riddles, and the guy who waddles around and sells drugs really well. And speaking of the Riddler, while I do love what Reeves did with all of the Batman rogues, especially in the context of his film, it would be a little disappointing to never get like a traditional version of the Riddler. You know, like the weird nerdy guy in the green suit with question marks that loves setting up elaborate traps for Batman. He's kind of like a Jigsaw whose sexuality is in question. And keep in mind, we've already gotten a glimpse of what the Joker is going to look like in Reeves' universe. So unless they retcon that, we aren't getting a very traditional take on that character either. And so far in this video, it might really sound like I don't want this to happen. But there are some massive upsides to Pattinson joining the DCU. One of the biggest being, for a lot of people, including myself, this is the first time that they've really nailed an adaptation of this character on the big screen in live action. And while maybe it's too early to tell, it really does seem like James Gunn is doing the same to Superman, where we're finally going to get that definitive take on the character. So why roll the dice on creating a new iteration of this character when we already knocked it out of the park the first time? Or, okay, technically the 6th time. Whatever. Plus, I mean, just look at these two. They're begging to be on screen together. Plus, it worked out that these guys are relatively similar ages to each other. I mean, Pattinson is 8 years older than Cornswet, so, you know, teenagers on Twitter would say that that would be a problematic relationship if they were dating. But still, it's not like 15, 20 years. Because I talked about Robin earlier, and James Gunn said that Damian Wayne is going to be Robin in The Brave and the Bold. And like, how's that gonna work, James? I know you're watching this too. Because on one hand, I love the idea of just jumping into this universe and having there already be a few Robins established. But David Cornswet is 31 years old. Damian is Batman's actual teenage son and is the 5th Robin. I don't know how these two could be the same age unless Bruce and Dick were both 12 years old at the same time, running around together like the Hardy Boys. Is that a reference that people watching this are going to understand, the Hardy Boys? Think like Gravity Falls, but they're both boys. But either way, Damian is 14 years old. Bruce would have needed to have this kid when he was like a teenager for this to work. So either Batman is much older than Superman in this universe, which I don't love. The lore needs to be reworked to fit this timeline, which also isn't great. Or we take the comics approach and we just make him 30 and then we don't address how the timeline really works out. Which is probably going to be harder to do in live action, but if you look at Pattinson, he's been a hero for a few years now, just like Cornswet has been with Superman. They're both new to the scene, but not completely inexperienced. And I think that compatibility would just make a lot more sense to start from. And we still haven't talked about the biggest reason why it would be a good idea to wrap Pattinson into the DCU. So, due to some technical errors, I am now a cheeseburger. Don't worry about it too much. So, if Pattinson isn't looped into the DCU, that means we will have 2 versions of Batman running consecutively, and that may be too much or too confusing for general audiences. And in order to justify this, the 2 versions are gonna need to be pretty different. And while I think Reeves' Batman is an incredibly faithful version of the character, I do think there is room for an alternate take on Batman that's just as accurate. I actually think that the Batman from the Brave and the Bold cartoon is a great example for that character that's a bit campier and swashbuckling instead of just dark and brooding. I think somewhere between that and Pattinson's Batman could work really well. But I still think no matter what they do, people are still gonna be confused that there's 2 different Batmans. Batmen? Batpeople. 2 different Batmans, each in separate universes getting their own solo movies. Especially if Brave and the Bold comes out before the Batman trilogy ends, which it most likely will. And we talked about how joining the DCU could potentially put restraints on Reeves' vision, but the reality is, having a coexisting Batman will also have restraints. For example, let's say Matt Reeves really wants the villain of the Batman Part 2 to be Clayface, but we have a solo Clayface film coming out that's canon to the DCU. So it's possible that there would be pushback from the studio that they don't want 2 versions of another character running at the same time. Or if the Brave and the Bold movie is using a specific villain, there's no way Reeves would be allowed to make another Batman movie with a different take on the exact same character. I mean, listen, James Gunn isn't Kevin Feige, so I don't know how much that matters to him, but the higher-ups may have issues with it. I'm looking at you, Zaslav, don't fuck this up for me. I know you're watching too. So, if Reeves joined the DCU, his rogues gallery may end up being wider than he wants, but if he stays out, it may be smaller. So, with all of that being said, which option do I think they should go with? Well, my honest answer is boring, which is both of these approaches have the possibility to be done really well and also be done horribly, so I don't think we'll actually know what the right choice was until they've already done it. But that's a lame way to end the video, so let's make a decision. I think ultimately the decision that will benefit the DCU in the long run is getting a new Batman. In the short term, Pattinson would be great because it would mean less confusion for general audiences, less risk of Batman fatigue, and it would mean the DCU already has a great film under its belt. But I think long term this is going to hurt them. We would need to wait so long for important characters like Robin, let alone him becoming Nightwing. We should use the version of the character that was designed for this universe from the ground up, instead of trying to force someone else's vision into a universe that it wasn't designed for. And while I don't think DC will be churning out movies that are barely finished like Marvel, Robert Pattinson is a legitimately great actor who has been in some fantastic films. I don't want him to be stuck to only playing Batman for the next 10 plus years. And even if he's on board now, he may not be in the future. And then DC will be in the same boat Marvel is in now, with all their biggest heroes leaving. Listen, it's bound to happen eventually, but let's not make it happen sooner than it needs to. With all that being said, if they can't crack the Brave and the Bold movie, it's not worth it to just push through and hope for the best. This universe needs to nail the big three, or it's just never going to succeed. If only there was a good example of that would come to mind. Anyway, that's the video. Thank you for watching. Thank you for all the support on this channel lately. It means a lot to me. Big, exciting new videos coming out in the future. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one.